Hello, today we are looking at dividing fractions. Now, we can do this on a calculator, so that's fairly straightforward, but we all need to be able to do this with a pen and paper method. The acronym that we use is DFS. There are, of course, other furniture stores available, but this will help us learn the method. When we are dividing, we're going to flip and swap. When we're dividing, we flip and swap. Okay, and this will help us work this out. Let's take a first example here. 1/3 divided by 2. Now, first of all, we recognise that we've got fractions and we are dividing. So that's the first part done. Now what we then do is we are going to flip the second fraction. Now, looking at this, this is just a whole number, but we are perfectly happy that if we take that 2 and divide it by 1, first of all, that does not change the size of the 2. It's still the same physical number. But this is now turned into a fraction. So what we're going to do is the first fraction stays the same. We're going to flip the second fraction over to put it into 1/2, i.e. we flipped the second fraction. This is where this comes from. Then what we're going to do is we are going to swap the divide for a multiply. When we're dividing fractions, we flip and swap DFS. 1/3 divided by 2/1 is the same as 1/3 times by 1/2. The reason this works is because we're doing a double inverse, because we've found the inverse of multiply being divide and divide being multiply, and then we found the reciprocal of the second fraction. We're flipping it over. It's called the reciprocal. You'll need to learn that word over the coming years. We found that. It then becomes fairly straightforward to do what we've done all the times before. 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 2 is 2. When we're dividing, we flip and swap. Let's have a look at another example. 3/5 divided by 4. Again, when we're dividing, we flip and we swap. So the 3/5 stays the same. We're going to flip or find the reciprocal of the second fraction. And then we're going to swap the divide for a multiply. When we're dividing, we flip and swap. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 4 is 20. 3/20. Have a go at these two questions, pause the video and then check back in to see if you've got the answers correct. 7/4. Helps if I actually get that question correct first of all, sorry. 7/10 divided by 4. We'll call that A, and B, 3/8 divided by 6. And we'll call that question B. Work those two questions out, pause the video and then check back in to see what you've got. Same principle as before. When we're dividing, we flip and swap. So I'm going to turn that 4 into a fraction. I am then going to flip it. So that is 1/4. I found the reciprocal. The 7/10 stay the same. The divide sign, I'm going to swap for a times. So we're doing a double inverse. That will give me 7/4. 40. Divide, flip, swap. We know we're dividing, we recognise that. 3/8. I'm going to take that 6, put it over 1, so we're not changing the magnitude of the 6, we're not changing the size of the 6, we're just putting this into a fraction. I'm going to flip the fraction, 1/6, and then I'm going to swap the divide for a multiply. That will give me 3 over 8 times 6 is 48. So that's how we divide with fractions when we have a whole number that we're dividing by. When we're dividing by fraction, it's the same principle, but you don't have to put it over 1 because it's already there. Let's have a look. 3/5 divided by a half. Same principle again. We're going to divide, flip, swap. DFS. So we recognise that we're dividing fractions. We're going to take that 3/5. We're going to flip the second fraction. So that is going to become 2/1. And we're going to swap the divide for a multiply. That will give me 6/5. Now immediately you recognise that this answer here is a vulgar fraction, an improper fraction. We can turn this into a mixed number. How many 5s in 6? 1, remainder 1, so it's 1 1/5. Let's have a look at another example. This time we have 2/3 divided by 5/8. DFS. When we're dividing, we flip and swap. 2/3 stays the same. We're going to flip the second fraction, so we end up with 5/8. And we're going to swap the divide for a multiply. Multiply through again. 2 times 8 is 16, all over 3 times 5 is 15. Again, to get the complete answer, this answer is correct, but to get the complete answer and get full marks, I'm going to convert that into a mixed number. 1 1/15. As always, it's over to you for the next 2 questions. See if you can work these out. Pause the video as you do so. Question C, 3/5 divided by 2/7. And question D, 14/15 divided by 2/3. Pause the video, work it out, then we'll check back in. DFS, divide, flip, swap. We recognise that we're dividing fractions. So we're going to take those 3/5 and we are going to flip the second fraction to find the reciprocal. 7/2. Swap. We're going to swap the divide sign for a multiplication sign. We can then just multiply as normal. 3 times 7 is 21. 5 times 2 is 10. 2 marks so far. For the third mark, we need to convert this into a mixed number. How many 10s in 21? There are 2. Remainder 1, and that goes over the 10. Question D. We are dividing with fractions. 14/15 stays the same. Dividing, flip, swap. We're going to flip the second fraction. 3/2. We have found the reciprocal. We've flipped that second fraction and found the reciprocal. We're then going to swap the divide for a multiplication. Now, on this particular question, I do not know my 14 times table off the top of my head, so I'm going to need to do a jotting. 14 times 3 is 12, 3 times 4 is 30, gives us 42. 42. 15 times 2 is 30. How many 30s in 42 is 1 and 12 30ths, which of course can be reduced down to 1 and 4 tenths, which can be reduced down to 1 and 2 fifths. Now, at this stage here, if you prefer than going through the long multiplication, then simplifying, you can of course simplify, then multiply like we did before. I'll take you through question D again. 14 over 15 divided by 2/3. Now, like we had before, the first stage is still the same. 14 over 15, flip 3 over 2, and we're going to swap multiply. Now at this stage here, this is where I will cross cancel. Now immediately I can see that 3 goes into both 3 and 15. How many 3's in 3? 1. How many 3's in 15? 5. Cancelling first. I can see that both 2 and 14 are in the 2 times table. How many 2's in 2? 1. How many 2's in 14? 7. I can then just multiply 3. 7 times 1 is 7. 5 times 1 is 5. Simplify it down, 1 in 2 fifths. Now it doesn't matter if you do the simplification first, then multiply, or oops, lost the page now. Or you multiply and then do the simplification. Both of them get to the same answer. When you're dividing by fractions, you flip and swap. D, F, S.